Good morning, everyone. Welcome to an episode of Change Starts With Us Ohio. Today we're with Libby Ray, who's an activist for the opposing the death penalty and also a big supporter of James Tench. Welcome, Libby.
Thank you.
Okay, I had an opportunity to talk to you a couple weeks ago. I think it was a little bit about the death penalty, and I'm kind of learning on that issue. Mine was on prison reform. But as I understand from you, there's in Europe, for example, there's only one country that supports the death penalty, to your knowledge.
Yeah, that's right. Any Belarus
Right.
death penalty in Europe.
Right. And then I found out they still have it on. Well, in Russia, they don't do it neither. I don't know if that's part of Europe. I guess it would be, wouldn't it?
Russia is part of Europe, and they officially have the death penalty, but haven't actually used it for 25 years, so they're not counted as having it anymore.
Right. So we're very close to abolishing the death penalty. They just had a week. They have the Republican support that they need. Well, I think they have the Republican support they need to abolish it, and so that's something to look forward. Like I told Jim, James, we know he's totally innocent of the crime, but at the same time, my passion right now is to overturn the death penalty and then fight for his innocence, because let's save his life first instead of an innocent man being executed. And then
Absolutely.
And then going from there. What got you involved in the death penalty issue?
When I was 15, my mum brought home the film Dead Man Walking, which is about a nun in Georgia, Sister Helen Pugine, who still works closely in trying to abolish the death penalty. She brought home this film which follows her story through supporting a man on death row and eventually through his execution. And it was the first time that I realised that the death penalty existed, and not only existed, but existed in Western developed countries. And I was shocked and horrified because obviously the death penalty was abolished years before I was born in the UK. And I decided to learn more about it and realised that I could write to prisoners on death row in America, and spoke to my parents, who said no at that point because I was 15, quite rightly. But I always remembered that it was something that I wanted to do. And eventually, about 6-7 years ago, I started writing to prisoners on death row in the States, and have been involved ever since.
Are they all innocent that you write, or not?
No, I don't believe. No, they're not. And to be honest, it's irrelevant to me whether they're innocent or not. I am fundamentally opposed to the death penalty, regardless of guilt or innocence.
Right.
I just don't think it's right. So,
Right.
no, some of them are guilty. Some of them admit they're guilty. They're very open about the fact that they're guilty and why they're in prison. Others, like Jimmy, maintain their innocence.
Right. For myself, there was a time in my life where I supported it 100%. But when I got locked up and I started, hearing about people being executed, and we could not sleep at the time, when a death was taking place, and it really made me think, and reevaluate my life. Why do I support it? And I just couldn't come up with any good reasons. They're aren't
any.
Right. What would you say to a family member of the victim of a family member? I mean, family member who is a victim. What would you say to them?
Well, I think it's very difficult. I don't think you can dismiss what a victim of a crime, a family member of a victim of a crime has gone through.
Right.
And to a certain degree, I can understand why they would support the death penalty, but for the person who's taken away somebody they love. But for me, it doesn't bring their loved one back, and all it does in the end is create more victims, because that person on death row is somebody's son or daughter, they're somebody's wife or husband, brother, sister, friend. All you're doing is creating more victims, of their loved ones who then lose somebody. It doesn't bring anybody back, it doesn't allow for any kind of rehabilitation, it writes people off, and
right.
Fundamentally anything as bad as the person who's taken somebody else's loved one.
Okay. Folks, if you have any comments or questions, you can post it down. Libby will be able to read them, and she will respond back, or I will. She's a little bit more qualified on this issue. And it really bothers me. I think there's only one person in Ohio that DNA was involved out of 140 some people. That's my understanding. I could be wrong. Now, getting to James Tench, how long have you known the gentleman?
A little over 5 years. I started writing to him a month after he received his death sentence.
Yeah, I was just looking at some of the pictures from his sentencing. He looked like a 15-year-old kid.
He does. He looks like a little boy then. He's changed a lot in a few years.
Yeah, well, prison will either age you or preserve you. But sitting on death row, I think it would age you.
I think it does for most people, yes. It's a very, very high stress and unnatural place to be.
Right. I have learned over the years one way to tell if somebody's telling the truth, does their story change every time they talk to you? And James's story has always stayed the same to me because I'm pretty good at remembering things. You visited James twice, to my understanding.
I have, yes.
Why do you think he's innocent?
Why? What, sorry?
Yeah. Yes. Why?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Okay, I was asking you, why do you believe that Jim is innocent?
Well, for a start, it's irrelevant to me whether he's innocent or not. Anyway, if he turned around to me in 10 years' time and said, actually, I'm guilty, it wouldn't remove my support from him. But as you say, his story has never changed. He has always maintained his innocence. His logic in his conviction. There's too many holes in the trial. There's too many holes in. There doesn't seem to be any clear motive. There's so many different reasons. But fundamentally, I believe him because I chose to put my faith in him, and he has told me he's innocent. He's shown me a huge amount of paperwork and the work he's done on his case himself, and it makes more sense to me than his conviction does. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I'm not trained to look for guilt and innocence. I can only go on what I'm told by a person and what my instinct tells me. It makes sense to me that he would be guilty.
Right, and I agree with you on that. And, he's not full of anger or anything. He told me one time, because I asked him, I said, do you think the person that committed this horrible murder should be on death row? Because I don't think she should be. But he said, no, absolutely not. He would fight opposing the death penalty.
Yeah.
But I do think the person that committed the murder needs to be held accountable.
Absolutely. And by opposing the death penalty, I'm not saying that people should be allowed to get away with murder, literally. I don't believe that. I don't believe that people should be held accountable for their actions.
Right.
I just don't think that the death penalty is an appropriate response to anything ever.
Right. It's kind of a mixture on death row. A lot of the people I've talked to in the past admits their guilt. And I have not found one person that hasn't shown remorse. Everyone I've talked to feels so bad because of what happened that they wish they could change it. And, it's kind of difficult, but, my heart goes out to them too. But, one thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what the death penalty it doesn't do is it doesn't allow for people to change.
Right.
It doesn't look at why they got to the place where they committed, what happened to them, that they got to the place where they they committed these crimes,
Right.
essentially these murders, in the case of the United States, that's predominantly,
Right.
or exclusively what the death penalty is used for. Why are we not looking at what happened to these people to get them to that point? Why are we not really considering rehabilitation? Why are we writing people off completely? There are certainly some people who would never be safe to be allowed back into communities.
Right.
And I understand that. But essentially, they're still people and should still be treated humanely.
Right, and respect and they should be treated with respect and receive proper medical while they're locked up.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely, because they are people, and then certainly in American prisons, they are treated worse than animals.
Right. As one political party in Ohio is pro-life, opposing abortion, and they say that all life is precious from the moment of conception to natural death. That natural death means not killing them.
Absolutely, and I get very confused by the pro-life movement, because actually in the pro-life movement, that's where you will find most people who support the death penalty, and to me that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Right, and I'm pro-life, and I'm opposed to the death penalty. And I'm finding a lot more Republicans today that's opposing it as well. For the most part, most Democrats opposed it, except I think there was 3 or 4 that didn't. But I think they've changed their minds as well.
Fundamentally, the death penalty doesn't work. It doesn't stop these crimes being committed. And if you look across the United States, the states that have the death penalty have higher murder rates, in fact, than the states that don't. Once people reach the point where they're committing murder, they're not thinking about the consequences. They're not thinking about whether they're going to be put to death. In fact, a lot of them maybe don't care at that point, but that's the consequence. It doesn't stop anybody from doing anything.
One thing that you told me the other day that was very interesting, what is the average sentence for somebody that commits murder in the UK?
It would be 15 to 25 years, and there are a few people in the UK who are serving life without parole. I believe last time I looked, it was about 63. Those people serving life without parole do get the opportunity to prove rehabilitation, and it would have to go through the Home Office. But averagely, people would be looking at 15 to 25, maybe 30 years for a murder in the United Kingdom. And most would be given the opportunity of parole around 17 years.
Those that commit murder in the in Ohio that has not been given are doing around 40 to 50 years, it seems like.
Yeah. The sentences that exist in America do not exist in the UK. I've written to people who've had literally been sentenced for 100, 200 years. These sentences don't exist in England and Scotland.
No. I mean, I wouldn't want to live in prison you're not going to live 200 years, but I wouldn't want a sentence like that. I would find a way out, which is really sad.
No. Yeah, and I know several people, actually Jimmy included, who have said to me, I would rather be on death row, even as an innocent man, I would rather be on death row than serving life without parole. I couldn't bear the thought of this being the rest of my natural life.
And James told me,
I can understand that.
Yeah, and James did tell me that too. And I told James, I said, support us on trying to get the death penalty overturned. Then we'll fight life without parole.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and a fulfilling life can be found in prison. It's very, very. It's unimaginably difficult. I've never experienced it. I can't put myself in that place, but I do talk to people who feel like they are making changes, who feel like they are giving something back, possibly in a very small way, but they are doing their best from prison. Right.
I think. I think there's 13 states in the United States that only have the death penalty now. I think. I could be off though.
Yeah, I know that slowly they're beginning to abolish. In the last couple of years, another couple of states have abolished the death penalty.
Yeah, Michigan was the last one, but Ohio is totally different than Michigan. Michigan went through the courts. We can't do that in Ohio, so we have to go through legislation.
Your government and your state, the federal government and your state government is set up so completely differently to anything that I've experienced in the UK that it's very difficult. I have to admit, it can be very difficult for me to understand how it works because it's so different in each state.
Right. And in Texas, look at the executions they do in Texas. Sometimes 2 a day.
Yeah, they're very prolific in Texas.
I wonder how many innocent people died.
At least we can guarantee that at least some did. Illinois abolished the death penalty bordering on about 10 years ago now. The reason that Illinois abolished the death penalty was because in a 12-year period, they released 13 people from death row, having had their innocence proven, and executed 12. So in that time period, they actually executed fewer people than they released as innocent from death row. And at that point, the governor said, this is not a foolproof system. There is too much risk of us executing an innocent person, and therefore abolished the death penalty then that was abolished in Illinois because of that.
Well, I respect him for that. And our governor, who I'm not a big fan of, did temporarily stop executions, but I guarantee you, as soon as they come back, he will not stop anybody's execution. He made a comment one time, don't come in front of his office for murder or for sex offenses. And our group don't judge anyone. We don't know if they're innocent. People can change no matter what they did wrong in life.
Absolutely.
And if treated. But let's start programming these people and let them go to college. Those on death row can't even go to college because they have to be 5 years to the parole board, and they have no parole board dates.
No. And then, if you look at some of the European systems, I have to say that the British prison system is, I would say it's better. It's more humane than the American system. Our sentences are shorter. We tend to treat our prisoners better. But if you move yourself further out into mainland Europe, and you look at countries like, for example, the Netherlands, they are actually having to close prisons in the Netherlands because they have such a good rehabilitation system that people are not reoffending. There is no recidivism. They don't come back to prison because somebody goes to prison there, say for drug offences or for sex offences, for murder, and they're
right. I would like to make a comment.
Approaching it is let's have a little look at why you've got to the point that you're doing what you're doing.
Right. We have a question, a comment here, more or less. It is from John. He said, court upholds death penalty for Brunswick man that killed his mother. John, how do you know he killed his mother? That I would like to know. I don't believe he's guilty whatsoever. He's proven his innocence. He's got so many people that support him, not just in our country, in other countries. They've done the research. You could read whatever you want in the newspapers. That the newspapers only print what sells. Comments like that really aggravate me.
A lot of the people, they put absolute blind faith in the justice system. They refuse to see that there are flaws. It is run by people. It's run by human beings, which means there is always room for mistakes. It's not a flawless system, and actually in many countries, and you'll forgive me for saying so, but I think in the United States, it's corrupt and powered by money. And, there are a very dear friend to me once said, there are no rich people on death row.
No.
And he is right. There are no rich people on death row because they can afford to defend themselves.
I no longer believe the courts are racist against race, but I think they are against poor people. If you don't have money, you're going to go to prison. And sometimes even if you have money, you're going to go to prison. Look at Bill Cosby. and O.J. Simpson, and I don't care. I mean, I'm not saying they're innocent or guilty, but money doesn't even prove anything these days. I do believe at one time
you're much more likely to be convicted and to be sentenced to death if
right.
you don't have money.
Right. But I think this page for James Tench is bringing out light. I think our YouTubes are, and for those that are watching, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Starts with Us Ohio. You'll be able to see this video with Libby Ray. I had to think of your name. I should say the lady with two first. Well, that's backwards. I think Libby would be a last name in the United States, but that's okay. But she's a woman with compassion, and like she said, she's opposed to the death penalty no matter what the circumstances are. She also stated that not everybody should definitely be released, but they should not be murdered by the state that they're in, because that's exactly what it is, murder. Let me.
And that's what's put on the death certificate after an execution. Right. The cause of death is classified as homicide.
Okay, it says James D. Tench, the Ohio Supreme Court today affirmed the 2016 conviction and death sentence of Brunswick man who murdered the mother. Let's see if. So, are you saying he's guilty, or are you saying he's not? Because if you automatically think he's guilty, I'm not sure exactly what you're on this page. This page is to learn, and people with compassion, for one. It's just prejudgment is really aggravating to me.
Yeah, and using newspaper articles to back up your argument is it doesn't make sense. A newspaper is reporting what happened in court.
Right.
The fact is that in court, Jimmy was convicted and then he was sentenced to death, and that's what that newspaper article is commenting on. It's not commenting on his guilt in innocence. It's not looking at the flaws of his trial. Yeah. It's reporting the fact that he was convicted.
Yeah,
it's not evidence towards his guilt.
Right. If you could go to the James Tench group page afterwards under the video and respond to this gentleman, that would help. It's more down your alley. You've known Jim a lot longer than I have. But there's no doubt in my mind if he's innocent or not. I know he is. I read a lot of his stuff. I'm not going to say, if there's another possible suspect at this point. But why don't you be open-minded and do some reading, and contact James Tench through JPay. We'll post his number underneath here, and you just download JPay, and the stamps are like, I don't know how much the stamps are, but they're not expensive. So let's be, smart in this and give, Jim a chance to share with you on his innocence. So are you planning on visiting James anytime soon?
Oh well, the pandemic is put a stop to that at the moment. I can't get into the States or easily get back into the UK. But as soon as this is where I would hope that I would be able to go. Obviously, it's a very expensive trip for me, and I have to juggle children and jobs and things. But as soon as I'm able to, I will get over there, because there is. I speak to James at least twice a week, every week, and have done for a long time. But there's nothing like being able to see him face to face, give him a hug, and sit in the same room and talk to him. So I very much hope I'll be able to get him. Yeah, and
then we can coffee because I'm not too far from that prison. But I was told by the ODRC in August I'll be able to do interviews possibly with Zoom of prisoners. And Jim is the only one that I'm interested at doing that at this time. There was a few people there that lied on me, and and stuff that kind of got me suspended. And I did check the policy. It does not say prisoners can't call and do interviews. It talks about staff and contract workers.
Yeah, and that makes sense. They essentially are supposed to maintain neutrality, and
Right.
they should. They're not there to judge people's guiltiness, as I'm quite sure they do, but they are theoretically not there to judge people's guiltiness.
Right.
They're supposed to be there to care for men and women who are in prison. Right. So neutrality is important for them,
right.
but
and
not for the prisoners, and not for the people outside who are supporting them.
Right, and for these people that's locked up that are innocent, when you take away the chance to share their story either on YouTube or podcast or social media, you're not giving them a fair chance. They,
you're not giving them a fair chance, and you're not giving them a fair chance of having support either, right. Which is absolutely vital to people in prison.
Right, and I told the institution, the ODRC, they could have a staff member with them when they do the interview, and we're not going to discuss the prison or conditions. We're only going to discuss why that person is innocent and give them a platform to share their story so people can know a little bit about them and maybe get involved. And of course, now I'm going to ask if there's anybody that is on here that would like to get involved. Please inbox myself. And I sent it to Jim. I'm looking up his number right now, but JPay takes a minute for me to Google up. Let's see, contacts. There it is. And for those that don't know what JPay is, go to your app store or I'm not sure what it's called on Android, but download JPay and type in. You have to pick Ohio, then type in James's number, which is 652-562. Again, that is 652-562. And please be an open mind and hear James out, or you could inbox any of us. Not so much myself, Libby Ray. I don't know who else is admins on the page. I forget. There's two other ladies, Amarillo or something. I'm bad with names.
So am I.
Yeah. But yours was kind of easy, knowing I had to ask Jim yesterday what your name was when he called. And I assured Jim that we're going to fight for his innocence. I'm not an attorney. Libby's not an attorney. Libby's not an attorney. But we share his story on social media and interview people that know James. And this is only going to be one of probably several interviews with Libby, and I want to get some of the other people that has known James for some time to share why they believe he's innocent.
Jimmy has a lot of supporters. Like anyone in prison, there are plenty of pen pals who come and go, but there are a lot of people who support him and like I do, believe that he is innocent of the crime he's convicted for.
Right. The original group that I started, Fair Treatment, Reform, and Reentry, was the first group that worked on prison reform in the state of Ohio. There was Ohio Cure, but they worked on treatment and conditions. And then this is following it, except we branched out to wrongful convictions and the death penalty, which works hand in hand sometimes. And sometimes they are guilty, but that doesn't mean they should be in there. Hi, Jana. I think it's Jana. Jenna. Okay. So I should put my glasses on first. If you have any questions about James Tench, we have Libby Ray on here, so feel free to ask anything. But try to have an open mind, please. And we will, any information you need, if we have it, we'll make sure you get it. And like I was asking you to do to JPay, James Tench, and again, I'm going to say it again, and uh, Jenna, if you don't know about JPay, please download it, and the stamps are real cheap in there, and pick Ohio. It will go through the prompts and add his number, which is 652-562. Again, that is 652-562. And again, I'll post it underneath the videos, and we'll try to gain him support. If you know an attorney that would be willing to help from Ohio, and it doesn't have to be Ohio, but they have to be willing. They have to be barred in, they have to be able to practice law in Ohio. And I think he needs an appeal attorney now. You know, why execute an innocent man, and why execute anybody? It's not going to stop. It's not a deterrent to crime, like Libby said at the beginning. And I get calls from victims, and it's really hard for me because I was locked up. And I feel bad for victims because they should not have gone through what they did. But believe in change. Killing somebody or keeping people in for prison forever is not going to change the outcome. And there's victims all around, like Libby said. If you execute a man, his family is. And what's really appalling to me and sad is, you got the condemned family in one room and the victim's family in another, and the condemned family has to hear the other side clapping and cheering. That's barbaric and sad that our country would do something like that. I understand. I could only imagine the pain that these people go through, but please, folks, be open-minded and be willing to help James Tench. You got 5 minutes, you got up to 10 minutes left. What would you like to share with these good folks?
I think I would like, firstly, going off what you just said, I think that people need to understand that when we against the death penalty, we are not in any way discounting or belittling the pain of victim families and what they've had to go through. It's unimaginable, the pain and suffering that they go through, and we are not condoning the actions against their loved ones. We are not trying to dismiss their experiences. We are just saying that the death penalty doesn't stop those experiences, it doesn't make it better, it doesn't bring their loved one back, and it's more families who have a similar experience to them afterwards because of it. Once you've executed somebody, they don't suffer anymore, they're gone, that's it. But their families suffer, their friends suffer, their loved ones suffer. And to believe in the possibility that people can change, that people can learn from what they've done, even the horrendous things, that they can regret what they've done and can become good, better people. They can show remorse. Nobody is a lost cause. And like I said earlier, I'm not saying everyone should be let out of prison. I'm just saying that everyone should be given a chance to be rehabilitated and become the best person they can be. And in terms of Jimmy, I would say, as you said, contact him and give him a chance. He's a good man. He's in an impossible situation. Imagine living your life with a date that you are not only going to die, but know that there are people out there fighting for your death.
And that's got to be really scary, knowing that you have a date to be executed. Could you imagine the day before when they take you to Lucasville and you put in a holding cell and you're given your last supper? And I remember one of the people, I think it was a Muslim guy, just asked for a green olive. But, then the parents or the family gets to visit him and all that. But it's like saying goodbye to a health man.
The pain of saying goodbye to your to your son, your daughter.
Yeah. And
It's unimaginable. It's inhumane.
very much. You and I was talking about some of the prisons that have the lowest recidivism rate. I think the Netherlands was one. Some of them don't have fences. Huh? Norway, I mean.
That's right. In Norway, they tend to have an open prison system in Norway.
Right. They don't have fences around. They bring them restaurant food. I believe they can go home on the weekends.
Some prisoners can. Yes,
Right.
some prisoners do.
Right. And they used to do that in Ohio. And I understand that, a couple of prisoners kind of destroyed it, but just because of a couple of people, that doesn't mean the rest are like that.
No, absolutely. And I think what we need to remember is that for many people, they behave how they are expected to behave.
Right.
When you go into prison in America, you are expected to behave as an animal. It is assumed by the staff in the prison that you are going to behave like an animal. And humans behave how they are expected to. They are forced to live in ways that mean they have no choice to behave how they do for their survival's sake.
Right. And forgiveness is very important on both sides. If you can never heal, if you don't learn forgiveness. In 1 John 1:9, it says he is faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So that's speaking from a biblical standpoint for those that are Christians. But healing is still vital.
And from the experience I've had with victims' families is that it's actually forgiveness. And I'm not saying that they should forgive. I'm not saying that it's easy. I can't imagine to me how hard it must be to lose a loved one and then forgive the person responsible for that loss. But
right.
My experience is that the families who have found a way to forgive, they are the ones that are truly freed from the loss of their loved one. Right.
Then you're no longer a victim of a situation because you learn to let go. That doesn't mean you're going to forget your loved one or forget necessarily what happened, but you're not going to dwell on what occurred at the time. You're going to get on.
Hate drives hate and anger.
Right.
Anger towards somebody,
right.
It only destroys you. It doesn't destroy the person you're angry towards.
Right. And this is coming from a lady that's in the UK that hasn't executed anyone since I believe the 70s. That has pretty much.
1964 was the last
right.
execution in the UK.
Right. And she has studied the United States on their execution policies. She's really followed Ohio, and she wants to see some change in the United States. And it's sad that we have people from other countries doing this when we should have people in our own country taking a stand as well. And it's great that we have other people. I'm learning a lot from Libby. There was a time that I supported the death penalty. But when I got locked up and people were being executed, we couldn't sleep. And finding out that a person claimed to be, that was sad. I remember when Wilford Berry was executed. He was known as a volunteer. I think he was executed in like 93 or 94. He refused any of his appeals and he was executed. And back then, people were just going to be executed anyways. Not many people won appeals.
No.
So.
And actually, I can understand why somebody would make that decision if they were in that position. Guilty or innocent. I can understand why they just would say, make this go away.
Well, I personally.
We need to bear in mind that the execution process itself is highly inhumane. The number of botched executions is huge.
I personally would rather be executed than have life in prison, knowing you're never going to get out. Life without parole, I mean. That's a punishment in itself. And then you're keeping those that are innocent locked up. And don't think there's not any innocent on death row in Ohio. There is, and there always will be. The prosecutors will not come back and admit any wrongdoings or guilt. The judges in Medina that are convicting these people, not just James Tench, but I know a couple other people that was wrongfully convicted by the same judge. And now they just pass it down from one family to the next for the judgeship.
Yeah.
They need to be voted out of office. So.
And the life without parole is, as you say, we work to get rid of the death penalty, and then hopefully we can move on to life without parole. There is quite a large movement in certain states to abolish life without parole. There are states that are now passing laws.
Yeah, I know that recently.
Under 18, under 18 can be sentenced to life without parole, but it is actually called in many places the other death penalty, because that's effectively what it is.
Right.
I read a very good book called it's called Too Cruel but Not Unusual Enough.
Right.
Which is a book written by prisoners serving life without parole, talking about their experiences, and it's very, very good.
Right. Many, many years ago, I don't know if it was the 60s, but the youngest boy that was executed, and I say boy because he was under 18. He was 14, I believe, out of Mississippi.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. 14-year-old boy.
Yeah,
I believe after was proven innocent.
Right. And they used to give juveniles life without parole in Ohio and other states. Ohio, they no longer do it, and I believe there's not a state that does it anymore.
No, the last few states have just abolished it for juveniles.
Right, and they're going to be commuted to life. Could you imagine being, and in Ohio, I think you have to be convicted as an adult. And I walked through at CRC Corrections Reception Center through the juvenile pod, and there was 13 and 14-year-olds in there, I believe, and they looked like kids, and they were used to being locked up now, joking around, playing. Yeah. Some of them were still playing with cars, and
yet research in psychology and brain development actually shows us that the human mind, particularly the male mind, but the human mind in general, is not actually fully formed until our mid-20s. So although we are officially no longer juveniles when we get to 18,
yeah, it's 27, yeah.
Developed, and we still haven't learned control as well as we might have done when we were in our late 20s, and we still haven't learned control about consequences and actions in the way that an adult understands. So
right.
Even at 18, we are still physically juvenile.
Well, folks, we will have Libby on again in the future if it's okay with Libby. And we will pick a topic and we'll give you updates. And don't believe what the newspapers say on James Tench, because they're going to put down what sells, and pretty much they go along with the state. I know in Columbus here, the news media will not talk to me because of my past. Some of them used to be my allies. So, that's one thing I do agree with Donald Trump, that it's fake news a lot of times. They don't print the truth. So, and if you would like to write letters to the editor in support of James Tench, please do so. If you would like to write a letter asking for an overturn of his conviction, I'll give you the information to his judge. I think that's okay, isn't it, Libby, if they wrote the judge?
As far as I'm aware, yes, there's nothing wrong with that.
Let's see. Yeah.
People to speak to Jimmy.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Jeremy Park said, the lady who is talking, please have her reach out to me. Correct? Rehabconsultant.net. His name is Jeremy Parks, and you're an admin on our page. You could inbox him. But the lady who is talking, please give her reach out to me through correctrehabconsultants.net. And you could look under the video and get the information. That would be better for you to really respond to this than me, if you don't mind. So, hey, if one person can be convinced on the truth, we did our job today.
Absolutely, and if we can convince more, that's even better.
Well, one at a time, we have no doubt, but I'm asking people to have an open mind, And please support our efforts and Senator Antonio's efforts to abolish the death penalty in Ohio. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening, and we thank our guest, Libby Ray. Boy, I can't believe I have to think of your name every time. She's from the UK. She has written many prisoners over the years on death row. She has came to visit James Tench a couple times, and she plans on coming down once it's allowed. She can't get back in her country, once she leaves. And the United States, they did open the borders, but I'm not so sure if it's from the UK or just Mexico. So
they've opened them from the UK, but we have to quarantine when we get back, which is impossible to do and work.
Yeah, especially if it's for 2 weeks or whatever quarantine is. Well, everybody, thank you for listening. Libby, we will stay in touch. Okay?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, and respond to some of the questions underneath, especially Jeremy Parks, who wants you to contact him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Bye.
That's Libby Ray from the UK, has a compassion and is driven to help these people on death row and to abolish the death sentence. Please pray for all that's involved. Pray for the victims and the condemned that they can abolish the death penalty, but there could be forgiveness on the other end as well. When you forgive, you start healing. And it's easy for me to say that because, I didn't have anybody in my family murdered, and I can only imagine what they're going through. But killing someone does not change the outcome. And I appreciate everybody for listening, and please stay in touch with us. Thank you, everybody. God bless.